Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Al. I've coming from two companies. I came to the Philippines to start Sunny Trike. So you can check out Sunny Trike at the website here. We've also got a bit of a Rails app that is now running on the Google Play Store via Hotwire Native. Well, technically Turbo Native. I haven't migrated it to Hotwire Native yet, even though I've done I did a native mobile app for my podcast here. Like this is my own little podcast player that I did on JavaScript and Turbo. That is now you also it's not on the Play Store, but I've built a Hotwire native kind of wrapper so that this can go with Compose multi-platform with local storage of the podcast if you want to have like offline listening and stuff. So you can check out those two websites to get a little bit more idea of what we're up to. And then as far as what I'm presenting tonight, it's a model context model context protocol, which is something that has been developed by Claude and Anthropic as a sort of standardized way of having agents, AI agents, access information from web resources, whether that's your app or something else. So as part of my kind of preparing and researching for this, I was going through like Google's stuff, for example, and Google is now preparing MCP servers for like Google Looker and BigQuery. Like BigQuery, if you have a bunch of stuff on a database and you want to use BigQuery, you can now, I don't think like the MCP server is there. You can use an MCP server. You can use an AI agent to talk to the MCP server to use BigQuery now. And they're doing that for Looker and a bunch of their other services as well. So this is just coming from modelcontextprotocol.info, which is sort of like a community resource. So yeah, again, it's just providing sort of a standardized interface for that you will expose to the internet that the agents will then deal with the server instead of trying to access the data directly or the service. So why? It's just a matter of just having a very standard way of exposing your APIs or exposing your information or exposing your functionality to in a way that's very understandable and digestible for an agent so that they can then call it the way we would do an API call. An agent can call these tools and prompts and stuff that are made and then take the data that's returned and do stuff with it. So yeah, it's really kind of like that glue layer that tends to be very challenging when it comes to integrations and stuff, and having a good way of exposing that to AI agents. So here's the standard workflow. You might have a database. You might have like a service, like you're going to book a flight. You might need to check a calendar. You might need to check your own calendar. And then you might need to check the flights available on a certain date based on what you got back from the calendar. And I say you, I mean the agent, because you're asking an agent to do this. So like you type something into your LLM, and then it's going to go and figure out the steps that it needs to execute. And so then, oh, maybe you've actually you want to shop around for 4 different airlines, and then each of them is going to have their own, in the future, each airline is going to have its own MCP server alongside its API. So generally speaking, this is something that if you are a company with an existing web service or database or something like that, you would write an MCP server. It's not something that consumers would use, or like a lot of the interest in AI right now is for like writing these agents and getting agents to do a bunch of your work for you. This is like MCP is, and especially the MCP server development is much more the companies that provide these web services domain and job. So this was a nice little set of tutorials. I'm just going to try and pull up the chat so I can see if there's any chats coming up as I do this. Where is it? Anyways, if there's a chat, just let me know, or if there's a question. So they had, I mean, it's a bit of an extended series. It's about an hour worth of videos that Microsoft put up, but they kind of had a set of recommendations that you might have when you're thinking about what you want to do with an MCP server. And so they kind of like talk about, like, so say you're doing weather. I mean, this is pretty standard programming, good advice, but design a tool to do one thing well. You don't want to build an everything app. You don't want to build like an everything bucket MCP server. You want something that's kind of focused on a particular set of tasks. Because if you write a good MCP server and then write a different good MCP server for a different set of tasks, then the AI agent can just read both of their sort of menus, or sort of like if you're thinking about reading the API documentation for an app, like the same thing has happened. An MCP server will expose a certain set of tools that are available from it. So having good separation of concerns in terms of the kinds of functions that you want to do is an important sort of early design and early, you want to have your good design intention right for that. And then flexibility. So they're talking about this like a Lego, like these tools are just like little building blocks, because an agent is able to do is able to interact with a bunch of MCP servers. You can really do one that's specific to database, one that's specifically dedicated to file access, or like they've got a calculator here, like doing those kinds of computational things. I mean, it's not to say that you would like actually create separate servers for the calculator and the database, but you just want to be kind of intentional about why you're including a certain set of functionalities within your server. The schema is quite important. You saw that Ray was dealing with schemas when he was talking about the way he wants the data to come back. It's the same thing here, because in a lot of cases, it'll be servers talking to each other, or the AI agents like acting as an intermediary between different servers. So at the end of the day, they're going to need to send the right data. It needs to be validated at these different steps of a certain workflow. So validated schema, when we're going to get to the next slide, and we're going to see that they actually take it a bit of a step further compared to like traditional testing and QA QC. So failures. This is something that if you've been through Obi Fernandez's book, you'll see that he's got a very kind of specific way of handling this. His patterns of AI application development, what he calls the railroad pattern, which uses a monad to basically chain function calls together, but also be able to kick out an error if there's an error any time, and have the errors like it's called the railroad pattern, because you've got your main pathway, but anytime there's an error, it'll kick up to the second track, and any kind of accumulated errors will make it basically back to your output at the end of the day, even though there's a complicated set of steps that a particular AI driven task might try to go through. Especially in these agent contexts where they're creating to-do lists of all the steps they're going to take to try and accomplish something. So yeah, scalability. I mean, you can sort of see that they're talking about a similar thing here with a parallel processing, although I think that's actually that's also the main tasks themselves, not just the error handling. But there's a bunch of like this. I mean, you can scale like. Yeah, scalability is its own challenge, and it's. I mean, these are problems that as programmers are always a challenge. It's just that the amount of data, and with traditional APIs, you have a pretty controlled, like kind of tree of possibilities, right? But when you've got AI that's more stochastically driven, there's just a lot more unpredictability of how the system's going to behave, a lot more chances that it's going to go into unanticipated behavior. So how do you scale something like that is just something you have to think about a little bit differently. And Obi's book is very good for that. I think even though it's a couple years old now, it's still, because it's about design patterns, it's still a very good resource for that. And then security. And I guess a specific another kind of side of that is rate limiting, because you've got a lot of people that are just asking AIs to do stuff, and like you hear these stories coming out of suddenly a database provider is getting like way more data than they've ever gotten. And it's because somebody asked an AI to do something, and it's like the most inefficient query that they could have possibly done. And they're going to now try and do it for a couple billion rows. And so now your database is getting this traffic that is written in this really sloppy way. But the person is just hitting the button saying, do it, do it, do it. So the security, like, I mean, there's security and then also just provisioning of infrastructure are sort of two sides of the same coin, where you need to really be thinking about what are you, like, who has permission to be accessing this data, and under what context are you going to expose your functionality to AI agents, because there's all sorts of things they might do. It's really unpredictable. And at the end of the day, it's going to come out of your credit card. So
Sorry, Al.
yeah.
I think Jasper has some questions.
Okay. Can you read them to me?
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about the QA QC of MCP servers. How do you deal with the flakiness as a result of the LLM hallucinating?
Perfect. Okay, that's the next slide. So I'll just jump to the next slide. Was there another question,
No, that's
or just that one?
that's that's the only question, Richard.
Okay. So Jasper, do you recognize this, the testing pyramid? It's got a few extra steps, but do you recognize this part from like a QA/QC program, the testing pyramid?
Yep.
Okay. So the two new rows are schema validation and then load and stress tests. So schema validation, being a step above unit tests, is where you're going to have it's integration, but it's integration just like in a more like, you don't know what data is going to fly around. So how do you validate that the right schema is coming in to satisfy whatever needs to be done? So that's this extra layer of testing at the low level, and then load and stress tests as which, I mean, would be in traditional app development as well. But the load and stress tests with like rate limiting. If you're new to Rails 8, rate limiting is now like something that comes like you've got a rate limiting line right on the application controller provided for you on your boilerplate code when you create a new Rails 8 app. So rate limiting is a new kind of like very intentional and specific thing that you kind of have to have your strategy around with this stuff. Did that answer the question? Any follow-up questions to that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so key takeaways, and you can look at this like I said, this is just like from a 5 or 10 minute section of an hour-long set of videos. So if you're interested in this kind of like how to build MCP servers in general, like rather than like a specific tutorial that's going to take you kind of through the process and the steps of doing a specific thing, then this was I found this to be a kind of worth my time. A lot of this stuff is again like what you would want to be doing in traditional app development as well. I don't think you're dealing with the same problems, but in new contexts with new constraints or lack of constraints. And then there's a lot more like background processing and async tasks. I think what Rails has done with solid cache and solid job and solid queue are all very nice. That's all very nice tooling for these kinds of MCP servers and kind of orchestrating and sending data around and doing stuff. I think what the design choices that they've made with Rails 8 is just quite well set up to handle the way applications are going to be evolving with these new design patterns. Okay, so getting into what I am working on. So another thing that I do is I'm a secretary for the IEEE. So IEEE is International Electrical and Electronics Engineers. They do a lot of standards documents. And so I'm a secretary of the development of the document around planning smart cities. So I'm talking all the time to engineers all around the world about how is city planning changing with all of these new technologies coming online. So I wanted to try and do an MCP server that provides some interesting data from a city planning perspective. And of course, we're doing this public transportation, total electrification stuff. So this New York City taxi data was very nice. It's around 70 gigabytes for a 12-month period of like all of the trips that happened for taxis around New York City and how much money was paid for them and like when it happened, what was the start point and end point. So quite a big data set, quite a lot to take and quite a lot to load into a Postgres database. They got it through a Freedom of Information request back in 2013. But what I did is I went and changed all of the dates to 2025. So I've now kind of got this data set, this like kind of fake data set that is like from January to December of 2025 that is now like when I get this onto a database on the cloud will be sort of just something to do like kind of a bit of training and inference and different queries and play around with like really big operations in Postgres and caching results and how is it changing and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm quite interested in this. That's why I spent extra time on the database side of this before I kicked into the MCP itself. And my talk next month is probably going to be continuing to build on this, almost certainly. So as far as Ruby has three options, three libraries or gems that I've found so far available. The first one, this model context protocol.info that I found is the one where I pulled those definitions from in the first few slides, and that's maintained by Shopify. So so maybe we'll be able to hijack Alistair at some point, or even Obi to come in and give us a talk about how they're doing that stuff. Because I noticed that Alistair made a LinkedIn post a little while ago about how things are all going to MCP. So this is the direction that Shopify is going for it, which is cool. I haven't tried it yet. What I ended up using was this fast MCP. The guy the maintainer of this gem, it has got a Discord, and he's been quite responsive so far, although I haven't been picking his brain yet. But you're able to basically just add the gem and then say Rails generate. And if you do that Rails generate, then you're already, let me pull it up. You've got this inspector that is sending, so you've got this inspector that has these tools, and you've got a sample tool, and you can just kind of run the tool, and okay, it's doing its thing. So yeah, tools. What like the main thing you work with or the main thing you expose via your MCP server is tools. That's the primary one. So if you're gonna like have the agent ask you to book a flight, you'll have a book flight tool. You'll have a check flights tool. You'll have a create user tool. You'll have those sorts of things where it's like, okay, the agent knows that it can create a user, so it's going to call that tool, and then the tool will just send the API with the correct data. And most of the models today, like Claude and all that, will be able to handle like you kind of giving it the data however you want. Like if you're going to create a user, you're going to give the email address, your name, and whatever else other information is required. And the model is going to be smart enough to be able to handle you giving it in all sorts of ways, and then pass that into the request that then goes and does it through the API. So that MCP is still dealing with the MPI, and you're giving it exactly the, did I say MPI? It should be API. So yeah, you're just giving them these things, these API calls that it knows how to handle, and then it'll pass the data back, and then it'll get the response, and then it'll somehow give you the response data back as well. And then there's prompts. There's 5 different kinds of things that you can expose via an MCP server, but the tools is according to all the people that I've listened to so far, the tools are the kind of the brunt of it, and then the other stuff gives you extra functionalities that you'll use for whatever other cool use cases or edge cases or whatever you got. So I haven't done it yet, but that's what it looks like. Yeah,
where do you build this like tool, like a simple tool? Where is it defined?
It's defined in the case of FastMCP. It might be different for the other gems, but in the case of FastMCP, it just when you run the install script, you end up with a folder called tools in your app folder. You got one called tools, yeah. So application tool, so that you got that, and then you got it, and then they just provide you a sample tool. So when I hit this run tool, this is what runs. And it's so like if I were to say yo and hello, and then I'm going to now YOLO. So I run that. Oh, did I wonder if I need to restart the server? Let me try to restart the server. I haven't used this too much yet, so I'm not super familiar. It also exposes server sent events that the MCP server is going to be responsive to. But for whatever reason, it's not coming up. It's coming up in my browser if I go to that endpoint, but the thing's not picking up. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. Okay, so yeah, it looks like you do need to reset the server if you're going to change a tool. It doesn't hot reload that, but hopefully you can see that worked. So tools being one of them. Resources. Yeah, so this is also from FastMCP, a resource. So I think this is like, yeah, this user all as JSON. So I'm there. Before I run this, I'm going to just show you a little bit about the database that I've set up. So I've been following one of the pragmatic programmer books called High Performance Postgres for Rails, and I've merged that with the database, the data, because this freedom of information database or data set, it's from, like I said, it's from 2013, and it's it's just in CSV form, and so I had to like load all of that in, and I had to merge. There's 14,000 medallions, so 14,000 taxis were in this data set, and then I've got another 14,000 riders. And then the count of the trips in this 12-month period is, actually, this is only for 2 months, is 24 million trips, 24 million trips over 2 months from
Where can
14,000.
Data?
It's this foiling New York City's borough taxi trip data. So they did a freedom of information request and they got it. It's about 80 gigabytes, the whole thing. So there's downloads here.
Okay.
Yeah. And okay, so with that being said, so there's already 28,000 users. So I'm not going to go all. I'm going to say maybe 0 to 100 or something, because I don't want to run that many. So now let me find, so resources. So we've got this MCP inspector here. So now we got the resources. List resources, users. Okay. So that's the example. Now, how do I run it? Refresh. Is Empire correct? User all as yeah, that should be right. Oh yeah, here we go. Can be hard to see. Yeah, Jeanette Torp. Yeah, so that's correct. But why is it only giving me one? It looks like you can subscribe to that as well. So if there's updates or whatever, I guess. See what the server says. Results, messages. Try this again. Okay, so all of the so this is showing 100 users. Okay, yeah, now it's showing the 100 users. So yeah, that's like an example of what an MCP server will do. So if you like one of the things that that's sort of the end of my presentation. I'll go back to the slides because I'm curious just to get your thoughts about this and what might be a fun next steps. So this is like I mentioned earlier. This is N8N has this self-hosted AI, so you can run Olama locally to make your agent. So I think I'm gonna one of the things I plan to do next is to do this agent sort of deal here locally. It talks about handling Postgres. I'm not sure how that works, but you've got like all this kind of drag and drop kind of N8N stuff. You've got an LLM platform to install and run for Llama. So yeah, that'll be one of the things I'll do.
What model are you planning to use?
What's that?
What model are you going to use in that project?
I don't know. It'll probably whatever is like one of the things I want to do, and this comes from you were referencing Karpati. He also he one of his more recent videos is how he uses MLMs, and he talked about kind of loading up books into the context window and then using that to do stuff. And I've got a bunch of pragmatic programmer Rails books. So like, for example, this one here for Postgres, do I have that open in a tab somewhere? It talks about these scenic views and like, so I guess the short answer to your question is, I think I'm going to use one that is kind of got a lot of code and programming based text data in it. And whether I would do fine tuning or just load the books into the context window are kind of two directions that I would go for it. You know what I mean? In terms
I think you can use RAG here. So since it's just loading the information, just loading the subset of the book. So I think RAG is really good in this scenario.
Yeah. Maybe you can send me that as a link later or something. I kind of have a look at a later time. But one of the videos that I found, it was from a guy, one of the IBM guys has like a series of sort of lectures about AI, and he talks about RAG versus CAG. Are you guys familiar with RAG?
Yeah, it's I'm familiar with RAG, but first time I heard CAG. Not sure what it is.
You said you recognize RAG, but you don't recognize CAG. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So for anybody who's not sure what it refers to, RAG is retrieval augmented generation. So it's for example, you'll ask like, what's the weather today? that's not information that is going to come from pre-trained data. It's not going to come out of, you're going to want to search the internet to get the most up-to-date information. So then the model is trained, but then it's trained with the ability to go and search the internet and return the results, right? So that's retrieval augmented generation. And then CAG is cache augmented generation. So that's where the retrieval layer is something that you cache. So if you've got a solid cache layer where you're doing, for example, a nice example for like this kind of like taxi data or the kind of stuff that we would be doing with TODAs on a web service is where are the passengers that are requesting rides right now? Like that's something that if we're updating it every few minutes, then you could conceivably have an MCP server that is going and asking the cache, and then the cache is just getting updated instead of trying to query the database. Like it would be extremely slow for us to search the database for the most recent entry in this many rows, right?
Mm.
That would be extremely non-performant. We would be much better off running a task and caching on a regular basis in the same way that what was his name again? The one who was doing views from Cavite, from Nara.
EJ.
Yeah, similar to what EJ was doing for his reporting. Something like that exposed via model context protocol is the sort of thing that's probably along the lines of like a good solution performance wise. But I would also like to, if I'm going to have a model context protocol situation and an agent, then having these books that are like the up to date, like the pickaxe book that's like got all the documentation for Ruby 3 is going to be a good augmentation to any general purpose LLM, right? And the ability to have those kinds of context windows are the sorts of things that I want to be able to do in order for like to just have like sort of like as a middleware agent, if you know what I mean. Like okay, we've got these tasks that we want to do, like maybe background tasks. How are we going to set those tasks up and stuff like that? And then being able to query the most recent Rails documentation is good for is going to be the like is it's kind of like I think worth investing into getting that kind of extra accuracy and up to date information. So yeah. I really like that whole thing, especially because I've always just been somebody who learns. I like using books to learn, and I can see myself continuing to buy books in the context where I can put it into the context window, and so then that just becomes part of my resource base. Otherwise, I've got to go and look it up myself. So yeah, that's my talk. I'll stop it there, and I'll update more next month.
Nice. Cool. Wait, sorry. Turn on.
Good. Were there any other questions?
I think Jasper has a question.
I can't see the chat when I'm screen sharing. That's the problem. Oh, wait, maybe I can. Oh, okay. Okay, so Jasper's saying MCP servers hallucinate less often, but there are still cases where they do. Yeah, well, I mean, it's hallucination is an interesting term in this context because you're like the tool, like if you're doing tools, then the hallucinations would come from either requesting the wrong data or trying to insert the wrong data. But if you're going to do prompts, which are another thing, like resources are resources. So you're just going to get like, okay, what are the users? What is the weather? What is the time? But if you're going to start doing prompts, exposing prompts where you're actually going to be inserting data into the prompts and then sending that to an LLM and then doing something with that result, then there's lots of room for all sorts of kinds of hallucinations. And now you've got different LLMs doing different things and responding to different stuff. So yeah, definitely lots of room for hallucinations. And you're just going to have to really be very intentional about what you're engineering. Okay. And then logging and stack trace. So I'm actually not that experienced with logging and stack trace and stuff, but what I would encourage you to look at is the railroad architecture and the monad use in terms of how, because the real key of this is that you've got these chained methods or chained procedures where you've got you do something, and then the result of that goes into the next task, and then the result of that goes into the next task. And traditionally with Rails, if like procedure 2 fails, has an error, then everything gets aborted. Whereas if you have this railroad method, then the errors can flow through and you got better, more streamlined communication. So yeah. Which is sort of what you're talking about with bubbling up. Okay, so, and then yeah, that's interesting. If that guy has a if there's any kind of like slides or anything like that, I'd be interested in seeing that for sure. And perhaps, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we reach out to them or something. Was that tonight that they presented about RAG? So yeah, because RAG has been around for a bit longer for sure. But I mean, it's still super relevant. It's not, RAG isn't going anywhere. Like CAG as an alternative is really like like an optimization thing for when you're needing fast data that's changing a lot. And then MCP, I think you would write MCP servers to take advantage of RAG and take advantage of CAG. I don't think that you would have a situation where you do MCP instead of RAG. It's they're sort of like it would be different groups making those decisions. But I mean, an MCP server could choose to do a RAG sort of prompt or a CAG sort of prompt. Never heard of CAG. Reckon you can do the same. You can do RAG with almost the same. Well, it's really CAG versus RAG is really where what you're searching, what you're querying. Like RAG is usually in the context of making a specific like API call or whatever. So it's really just if what you're querying is the cache, then you're doing RAG on the cache. And so if you call it RAG or CAG, it doesn't matter really. It's just that you're caching. Like it's really like, and caching is a challenging thing to do in apps, and being really responsive and being really performant and stuff is like the Martin Fowler's, one of his famous lines is, there's two very hard problems in computer science: naming things well and cache invalidation. Yeah, it's the difference is on the storage level. It's what are you retrieving? Where are you retrieving it from? You can retrieve from a database, you can retrieve from an API, you can retrieve from a cache, you can retrieve from a file system. Not a huge amount of other options. You can retrieve from sensors. You could do retriever from a sensor in real time or something. Could also be retrieval augmented generation. So, like if you're doing like robotics kind of stuff, or yeah. So, I think CAG, like cache augmented generate, is a like a subset. Is a subset of of retrieval. Retrieval is a more general case. Yeah, definitely. Our architecture of data is definitely not a challenge that's going anywhere with the advent of AI and this kind of big data stuff. But one of the things that I hope that one of the reasons I asked you, Ray, if you would consider if you're going to put this stuff up in live and do a bit of a service is I think that I would like to put this database and MCP up as a public service or sort of something that people can just kind of mess around with. And I hope that that will sort of give a bit of a model for Filipino open data initiatives, open government, open data sorts of things, like smart city groups, putting out city data and these different open APIs that are happening all over the world. You go to Open Data Philippines, there's almost nothing on there right now, but there is a platform. I would be very happy if we were able to sort of somehow show people what open data can look like in such a way that cities start to say, okay, maybe this is something we want to pursue, for example.
Sorry, can you hear us?
Yep. UP might be spearheading some open data initiatives. I'm not aware of them. I just looked at the kind of DICT has an open data Philippines website, and I just found I didn't see much, but I would not be surprised to learn that there's some researchers at UP that is doing that stuff. So that might be a good idea for you there, Jess. If you can find some of the researchers that are doing open data stuff, then they might be a good candidate to talk to about doing a meetup in the future. If you can find groups that are actually working on those sorts of initiatives. Well, I think this is perhaps a good place to leave it if nobody has any other things. And it's great to see your participation, Jasper. Very, very nice to have somebody active in the chat and engaged, because it's not like we often end up with meetups where we don't have too many people actually having much to say, and so you're kind of like just talking into a screen. So very, very nice to have chatting and questions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Do you guys have any?
Okay, well, I think we're good. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think I will call the meeting. Excellent. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. We're all in the same time zone, so it's easy to say night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take care, y'all.